Okay, well, it's a couple minutes after noon. I think we'll officially kick off this webinar. Want to welcome everyone who's joined so far. To see we have about just under 300 participants so far. My name is John Wilbeck. I'm the Executive Director of the Nebraska Board of Engineers and Architects. And this is our first webinar we've done as a joint webinar, and we're lucky to have the Nebraska State Fire Marshal's office here with us. And I will introduce, first of all, to you Doug Hobein, who's the Assistant State Fire Marshal. He's been with the Fire Marshal's office since 1985, so he's got a lot of experience working at the Fire Marshal's office. He's got a degree in fire protection technology from Southeast Community College, and he has held the positions of plans examiner, manager of plans division, and the deputy fire marshal. So Doug, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Josh. I've got all the gray hair to prove all that experience too. So yeah, it's one of those things. I bet some of you out here probably weren't even born when I started. So let's not go down that road. You too, Taryn. So I do want to thank John and the board specifically for giving us this opportunity to talk to you and to share what little knowledge we may have. But the Fire Marshal's office has that narrow focus of fire and life safety that sometimes is overlooked and not focused on as much. So we wanted to try to do that today, and hopefully we can do something to help and give some guidance for you. I know we call it lunch and learn. I can't help you with lunch, so hopefully we'll do some learning, but we'll do our best. So usually I get feedback when I tell terrible jokes like that, and that reminds me to just keep moving, but without anybody groaning in the audience, I may tell other terrible jokes, but you can address that in the chat box if you want. So again, thank you. But today we want to focus on oh, I saw a laughter one. Good. Thank you, whoever did that. That was great. So yeah. We want to focus on construction, obviously. That's what you do, and that's a big part of what we do as far as our plans division. So we're going to focus on our plans division, what they do, and how they interact with you, how plans are submitted to our office, what different kinds of plans, that whole process of doing that, what to expect from the fire marshal once you have submitted those plans. We're not going to go so much into the inspection part of it and what you might see in the field. We can do that on another day if we need, if there are a lot of questions or some interest in that sort of thing. But we have our plans division staff, and they will introduce themselves and cover the issues with the PowerPoint. Hopefully we can all see that when that jumps up on screen. So feel free to jump in with questions. You know, we don't have to limit ourselves to just plan review at this point. If there are some specific things you want to see and talk about, I will do my best, and I know our staff out there will do their best too to try to answer them. So without any further wasted time and horrible jokes, I will have you talk a little bit, or have Kayleen Lovegren, our plans division manager, start off and do some introductions with her staff. Thank you.
For those of you that don't know and probably haven't seen my face because we're all remote now, our team is fully remote. We have 2 plans examiners currently and myself in the Lincoln office, as well as Taryn Sandin. She's our office specialist. She'll be going over the presentation, but I just wanted you all to be able to put a face to a name. So again, I'm Kayleen Lovegren, the plans division manager, and then I will go ahead and let Laura introduce herself, and then John can follow.
Hi there. As Kayleen mentioned, I am Laura Herblin. I work remote from Chadron, and I'm the newest plans examiner. October, I've been here 3 years. Laura Herblin from most recently Colorado, and happy to be here and remote plans examiner.
See if it works. John Dodds, plans examiner, remote from Lincoln, Nebraska. Been here just full time again, 1 full year.
You can go ahead and take things off.
All right. Hi, my name is Taryn Sandin. I am the office specialist for the plans division. So I'm the one who receives all the calls and most of the emails, unless you're emailing one of the examiners directly or calling them directly. I am gonna walk you through how we do our plan submittal process. Feel free to ask questions in the chat box if you have them as I go through this presentation. Laura is going to be moderating, so she'll be letting me know when there's questions, just because since I'm sharing my screen currently, it is kind of difficult for me to see the chat box. So Laura will be letting me know when if there's any questions. I believe Josh has this PowerPoint available. Any of the links contained in the PowerPoint should be active. So if you don't have to necessarily worry too much about taking notes, because you'll be able to click on the links in the PowerPoint. So without further ado, this slide has all of our email or direct email addresses. I'll flip it back to this at the end as well.
Hey, Taryn, I'm going to interrupt you real quick. There's a handful of people that aren't able to hear. I just want to maybe go through real quick how to check your audio settings.
Awesome.
On the bottom, there's a mute and a start video button and a stop video button. If you click the arrow next to mute, you should be able to change your audio settings and test them. We'll give you a couple seconds and then Taryn can hop back in. I assume no one's going to be able to hear me telling them that, I guess. I don't know, Taryn, you maybe show your screen. I'll send a message. Go ahead. Just keep going. I'll send them a message.
All right. Okay. Okay, so I will go ahead and start. So for the plan submittal process, we do not accept applications via either email or share file. If we receive applications that way, we do request that you go ahead and do it through our OnBase. Like I said, the link is available on our website. You can also get it through our main page by clicking on the plans division. We have two ways of submitting an application. We have the electronic plan submission and the electronic addendum revision form. So the electronic plan submission is going to be the one that you use the most. It's going to be for all of your preliminary, your shop drawings, and your building drawings. And then your electronic addendum revision form is what you would use if there has any updates to the plans that you have previously submitted. So like it says down here at the bottom, you will need to use that plan number that is assigned to you to be able to submit that. Once you have clicked on the electronic plan submission, it will prompt you and ask you whether you are an existing customer or new customer. You are a new customer if you have never submitted electronically, if any of your information has ever changed, or if the company that you have submitted to has changed information. When you start typing your name under submitting party over here, if you've clicked on existing customer, it will prompt you to select something that is already currently in our database. Like I said, if you don't see your information there or anything has changed, you can either click new customer if it's drastically changed, or if it's something that you realize that the email address is just missing, like the .gov, .com, you can change it within the existing customer setting. Anything that is not with a red asterisk is not required. So pay attention to that. If you're missing something with a red asterisk, it won't let you submit. And whether or not something without a red asterisk is filled in is up to you guys. So there is an area for additional individuals receiving that code review. One thing I would like to point out is, because I've had some questions about this in the past, is whoever you list your contact person as with that contact email and contact phone number, that's the person that will get your invoice, and that's the person who will get any updates regarding that application. So if person that you've put into your contact email or contact phone is not the person to contact, make sure that you've updated that under your information. Any of the email addresses you put under additional individuals will only receive that code review at the very end. The next section is location information. One thing that we do ask is that you use the city assigned address. I know sometimes these plans are connected to something either with DHHS or another division, either like liquor licenses and stuff like that. Once we've released that code review, it does take us a bit to be able to change it on our end. And sometimes whatever the code review says needs to match up with whatever DHHS or the Liquor Commission has on file or any other entities. So if it's not that city assigned address, sometimes there can be issues both on our end and on your end further down the line. And so, yeah, we just ask that it's a city assigned address. The only exception to that would be if you're submitting a preliminary plan review, which is basically like a electronic consult. And with that, we would accept a crossroads. But the more that address that you are providing, that's how our deputies, that's the address that our deputies put into their GPS to be able to find your location when they're searching for that building. Laura says that there was a question about removing contacts that have that are no longer working for the company. You can request that through email. Unfortunately, I've not found a great way to change them quickly. So if it's someone who has completely left the company, you can email myself to get those removed. But like I said, unfortunately, I haven't found a way to do it quickly. But you can just disregard them in the interim. Another question is what if the city has not assigned an address yet? So that's a very good question. So if a city has not assigned an address, we ask that you hold off on submitting that application. Our turnaround time is now 10 business days or less. It's been quite a bit quicker. We still say 10 business days just in case our plans examiners are ill or out of the office on vacation. So like I said, with the exception of the preliminary plan, there should be ample enough time with those 10 business days for you to be able to get that city assigned address and then have it submitted to our office. So yeah, like I said, if you don't have that city assigned address, we will ask that you hold off on submitting that plan until you do have that. So the other thing with our addresses for the location information is that each application can only have one building associated with it. For example, if you have a apartment complex or a building complex that's got 3 buildings, let's say A, B, and C, each building will need to have its own submission. So building A, building B, and building C will be each one individual submission each, so 3 total. Even if the addresses are identical, they would still need 3 different submissions, and each of those 3 different submissions will come with their own review fee. And that it also doesn't matter if you're even just using duplicates of the same plan material. Like if there are 3 identical buildings and they're for 1, 2, and 3, that's fine. You can upload that. Just make it clear either in the location information if there's a different preceding number, or in the project information and the project name, building A, building B, building C, stuff like that. We do have an example on how to separate out that address up here. So the number is in the first column, prefix if it's north, south, east, west, and then the street name, and then the type of road it is, road, highway, street, and then if there's a post suffix. And then down at the bottom, every once in a while I'll see one that comes in that says like Lincoln, comma, Nebraska. Our system is pulling that city name, so Lincoln, comma, Nebraska will confuse it. So just add the city. If for some reason this notice pops up that your project location falls under the jurisdiction of a delegated authority, you can contact our office. We do have we use the GIS locator to see whether or not it's in our delegated authorities jurisdictions or not. But we do defer to the delegateds when it comes to jurisdiction. So if, say, for example, Omaha says the fire marshals is going to review that, we will go ahead and review that plan. But if Omaha says, nope, that's our jurisdiction, we'll have Omaha review that.
Karen, can I pop in for a second? There was a comment about Gretna, Sarpy County not issuing addresses without a state fire marshal plan approval or submittal. I'm not really sure. Doug, maybe you can help with that. We really don't want to be processing applications without a physical address. So if that's something that they're enforcing, maybe we can have a discussion with them. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I guess I would agree. You need to have the physical address, but if there is a special circumstance, let's take it on case by case and talk about it.
But it sounds like Gretna, Sarpy County is making a stance that they will not even assign an address till they have an application or approval from us. So maybe that's something we can follow up with them about.
Yeah, I think we'll have to.
Okay.
All right, and then going if that notice is triggered, make sure that you are indicating state-owned or the CMS certified for asterisk. But since not every plan is going to have that information, that way, especially you know that when it comes to agency, like that is sometimes difficult to figure out.
Hey, Taryn, I'm going to cut you off again. I think your video is competing with your presentation. You want to shut off your video and then maybe go back a little bit. You just went really fuzzy for a moment.
Sure. Nope. So I'll go back up a little bit. So, but if the notice is triggered, make sure that you are checking state-owned or CMS certified, just so that that is clear. Because state-owned, that accessibility fee is applicable.
And Taryn, your audio is still being weird.
Hardwired in, or are you using the Wi-Fi?
I'm not wired.
Doug, are you having any issues there in the office?
She sounds terrible to me too, but I don't think there's any issues on our end here.
You're coming loud and clear through yourself there, so.
Aaron, if you want to use my computer, feel free.
Well, let me try one.
Really can't hear you very well.
Sounds a little bit robotic.
Okay, how about this? Does that sound better?
That's better.
I think you're back now.
Awesome. Okay, I think it was because I was optimizing on for my voice because the construction next door. So. All right. Sorry about that. So if the notice was triggered, then make sure you're checking either state-owned or CMS certified. That way we are able to just assist us in the process of when we send out that invoice. For state-owned items, regardless of where it's located, we would be doing accessibility review if that's applicable. And same with healthcare, it does help to know whether it is CMS certified, because it's popping up in a delegated authority. I just need to know whether it is CMS certified and whether that would actually fall under our jurisdiction. For the facility, project facility name, make sure that you are using the most specific name that you can. I have had submissions that say like office building or new office, that then later when we're trying to go back and find those, it becomes more difficult because it's not saying that it's like Emeritus Building or Friends or something like that. All right, for the invoice, there is an example of what the invoice email looks like. Do ask that.
Karen, sorry to interrupt. People are still having trouble hearing you. It's still staticky.
Sure. Well, I may actually just stop and come use Doug's.
Oh, I don't know. The only thing I can think of is if you maybe just double check the connections, Taryn, make sure everything's tight. I mean, we didn't have a problem when we
I
tested
plugged
it.
into
So.
your setup here at the office, so it is all I'm doing. So. Okay, I will pop over and start it off on Doug's computer.
All right, guys, we thought we had everything
Sorry.
tested out and worked out, but they're also on the state network there, so hopefully there's not an issue. Coffee break, I guess. Just from previous experience too, if you shut your video off there in Doug's office, that might free up some static space as well. And then you're also still muted when you're ready to talk.
Okay, while she's working on that, does anybody have anything that question you may have or any issues you wanted to bring forth? We can kind of jump to the question and answer quickly if we need to. You can type away if you'd like. Delegated authorities. Yeah, we give our authority to do state inspections to several cities and entities in the state. And let's see, I'm going to miss some, Kayleen, so you can jump in. Omaha and Lincoln and Bellevue, La Vista, Papillion, Grand Island, North Fork, North Platte, Scotts Bluff and the University of Nebraska system. Includes everything but the University of Nebraska Med Center. Is that complete? Okay, Taryn is back. We're gonna,
Yeah, I was just taking a look there at our map as well, but that will be covered on one of our slides as well. Come here in a little bit, but we do have all of those maps available on our website as well under the plan tab. And then, Taryn, I don't know if it's helpful, but I did just forward your. And it looks like Josh said that they're also available on there as well. Somebody could maybe pop into the chat about how far back do we need to start over? Like, do you remember the last slide you could hear well?
I'm guessing it was the one after the review of the, the addresses.
Okay.
Yeah, that was it.
Okay, fantastic. All right. So this slide, correct?
We're not seeing it here yet, Taryn, if you want to share from. There it is.
All right. All right, so if that notice is triggered, make sure that you're indicating whether or not it is either state-owned or CMS certified. This just helps us in the determination when we're sending out the invoice and when we're doing whether we're also determining whether it's our jurisdiction or not. Because every once in a while, something will come through in a delegated authority that it's not terribly clear if it's healthcare or state-owned, or if it should be sent to that delegated authority. Project name, make sure that that is as specific as you can make it. Names like office building and new office sometimes causes issues down the road and trying to find it again or link it to shop drawings or other submissions. And then the estimated start date and estimated completion date are when you are projecting or know the start date or the completion date of your project. This helps us determine whether or not to assess a late fee or not. That start date should be for start of construction, not start of a bid or project ideas. That makes sense. For agricultural projects, that is not something that we necessarily review. We do like grain bins and site plans for propane and anhydrous ammonia. But if it's zoned for agriculture, that's not something that we review at our office.
I want to jump in here real quick. There's a question in the chat about why do some, according to many, rural building owners in communities that don't have a building permits department think that when they get a fire marshal plan review, they think it's an actual building permit. I just wanted to say, and I think I can speak for the state fire marshal too, but Doug can of course correct me if I'm wrong here. We don't have any jurisdiction. I know the board doesn't over local jurisdictions and what they do or do not allow or approve for building permits. So the board doesn't have any say. We have no jurisdiction, like I said, over local communities. So that's a question to be raised with that local community or local jurisdiction.
Yeah, I try to make it clear when people request. A lot of people say, I submitted for a permit. I try to make it very clear that what you're getting back is not a permit, it is a code review. So I try and correct everybody that calls in that it is a code review and not at all a permit. Because a lot of people will say, what's my permit number? But we're not issuing a permit with this. For the project information, the difference between submitting a preliminary plan or a final building plan is that a preliminary plan is basically the same as a consult. So we still do either in person or virtual consults, but you can also submit it through as a preliminary plan. There's no cost to submit that, but you must resubmit that application and pay the review fee once the preliminary code review has been released. So it is typically only used by projects that are usually over $1 million and at least 3 months out from the estimated start date. Sometimes I'll get things that are marked as preliminary plans that are trying to build within 2 or 3 weeks. And that would not be the best use of a preliminary plan because you'd have to wait within that 10 business day turnaround to get that preliminary code review, and then you'd have to resubmit for a final plan. And if, depending on when you get that preliminary plan back, that could incur a late fee since the application would be submitted after the construction date. So if you ever had any questions on that, you can always call our office and I'd be happy to figure out with you whether or not that your plan would qualify for preliminary. So preliminary plan by definition is identical, to the building plan.
And just for clarification, someone's asking for a little further there. To me, a preliminary plan is in the very beginning planning stages of a project. Say you have a multi-million-dollar college, I don't know, dorms that you're working on or something like a sports arena or something like that, where you want our input early on. If you have some questionable things that you're not sure of, the preliminary plan would be handled very similarly to what a consultation would be. It's just a formal in writing pre-review, I guess you could say, of your final, so that if there were things that need to go back for back to the planning board or how you want to handle those things. But the preliminary is a no cost. Us look at it once. If it's going to be exactly what you're submitting as your final, I would suggest not doing a preliminary because it's just going to delay the process for you. As far as your final versus your preliminary, there really is no difference in the document that you're going to receive from us. It's just whether or not you're going to be able to get an inspector to come out and approve it. The fee has to be submitted with the plan review for an inspection to be created. So if you are looking for a final, and we don't require resubmissions for responses, you just work those things out with your local inspector. So in most cases, to be honest, finals are what we see most. I think very rarely we get preliminary reviews anymore, unless, like I said, they're very large projects with some questionable things that you're trying to work through.
So yes, thank you for that. For the final plan, and then there's also, that, just to reiterate, there's that 10 business day, turnaround. And then you're also invoiced for that review fee, that NAG fee, which is that ADA, that accessibility, review fee, if that's applicable. And then the late fee, if it's applicable, and we use that email listed on the application. So when I send out those invoices, it's the computer pulling whatever email is, has been typed into that application, it's pulling it from there. So just make sure that when you're submitting that application, you're double checking to make sure that your email is spelled correctly, that it's got all the necessary items such as the @ or a .com, .gov, .org, because it will go ahead and trigger that email to be sent and then kind of disappear off into the ether. And I don't necessarily know if the email has successfully gone through or not. Especially if it's technically an email address, but just not the correct email address. We do go ahead and cancel applications that have gone over a month without any payment. I try and send out invoices on Mondays or Tuesdays if there was a holiday or it's out of the office. So if we've sent a month's worth of invoices and we still haven't gotten a response, we do go ahead and cancel that application and send you a letter telling you as such. For the type of plan and project description, the difference between the two, type of plan is split into building plans and then shop drawings are the two main categories. The ones that I see the most are building final plans. Those can also include that interior finish as well. And then the shop drawings are, those don't have an accessibility component to it. And they typically tend to be smaller in cost and scale. That shop drawing sprinkler system, the shop drawing fire alarm system are almost always submitted by either the sprinkler contractor or the fire alarm contractor, because we are kind of checking to make sure that they have one of the applicable license from our office for those submissions. Any of the other shop drawings can be submitted by the general contractor. I will say I have been noticing an influx of people selecting other. Other is something that typically I don't ever see. I think I've only ever seen it for like car overhangs and like a event tent or something. But if you ever have questions about that while you're doing the application, feel free to give our office a call and we can walk you through that. For the construction type and number of levels, once again, that's something that isn't required. If they're communication towers, are you talking about the generator? Those generators are, if they've got any sort of diesel, would be submitted through ASTs.
Yeah, Taryn, there's a lot of questions coming through. Like, why don't you just finish what you're doing, then we'll circle back to the questions as we have time allowed. But typically, just to broadly answer the questions there, the only things we're going to be reviewing are things where life safety comes into play, buildings occupied by the public for commercial use. So the tower would not be something we would look at.
For estimated project costs, that's also something I want to touch on. That should be the estimated cost for whatever you are submitting. So make sure you're leaving out anything like underground fire main, fire alarm, fire sprinklers, whatever in that estimate. This also comes around back to if you have multiple buildings, even if on your end it is one package under $10 million, make sure that you're chopping that up into the applicable 3 parts. So if one building's $7 million and, you know, the other 2 are like 1.5, making sure that those are separated out correctly so that we can invoice you correctly. So last but not least, the construction documents, we did update it so that it now takes up to 4 gigabytes. So that can equal thousands and thousands of pages. So there shouldn't be any issue with giving us all the needed files. File type, PDFs are by far preferred. That's the one surefire way to make sure that we are able to open it successfully on our end. If you upload either a zip folder, a folder, and sometimes pictures, it will let you submit it, but on our end, it's blank and there's no documents. So make sure that it's PDF if at all possible. If that is something that your system absolutely cannot do, give our office a call and we can work with that. Also, if there are more than 5 files, and typically if they're all single page files, we do reject those just because on our end, they all have the same name. So we ask that you try and put them all in one PDF. Because otherwise we've had times where the plans examiner gets an application with 19 individual file uploads, and sometimes a file or a page can get missed or skipped over if that happens. Quality wise, we strongly prefer a professionally done one. I know every once in a while, if it's just a small room or something, we have accepted clean printed drawings that are easy to read. Though if they are hand drawn or difficult to read, we will reject your application based on that as well. I also frequently get questions about whether or not that this question down here, whether or not that you are required to have that state registered engineer or architect stamp, and you can figure out whether that is required. I know that the board has a wonderful flow chart to figure out whether or not that is required or not.
I think this might be a good point, a time to also let everyone know. I think that was kind of part of the questions in the chat. Every review that we send out is actually copied to the board. So every drawing that we see, they actually get a copy of. So anything that comes through our office, they will see and make that determination if it's something that they need something additional than what we have. But as far as the stamp requirements, that is not something enforceable by our office. That's something that they do on their side of the fence.
Sure, and let me just add to that, Kayleen. So like she said, we get, if the state fire marshal's office receives a copy of a set of plans that does not bear the seal of an architect or professional engineer, they send it to us and we look at it and see if under the E&A Act, that project would require licensees depending on the size and the complexity of it. And we simply start with Rule 10.3. All of the flow chart that's referred to on this slide, that's really all distilled. All that statutory language in the Act is all distilled down simply in the rules. And that was really intentional because that takes the 20 people design and takes allowable square footage. And a committee looked at that, and Rule 10.3 is straight out and authorized by what the statute says in the Act. So if you're an owner in a rural or any part of the state that doesn't have a building department or issues building permits, all projects in Nebraska still have to comply with the E&A Act, which the board obviously enforces. So once the state fire marshal sees a set of plans that don't have a seal, they send it to us. We look at it and then take action if needed. And you read about those most recently in our most recent newsletter. A lot of the cases in the back are from agencies like the state fire marshal that we get a set of plans from that don't have seals. We contact the owner and a lot of times start remediation. So that's what we're trying to fix, is to make sure that projects that need licensees on them get the required licensees on them.
And also to piggyback on that, I believe most, if not all of our reviews that go out have a blanket statement stating the requirement of a stamp or not is under your guys' jurisdiction, and that you may be contacted by them if it does not include one.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
All right. Also, a good tool on our end to check whether or not we have received your application is to follow up using check your submission status. It's an Excel document that I update weekly, typically on Mondays. There's 4 different categories: plans under review, plans awaiting assignment, plans awaiting payment, and completed plans. That lists all the plans that are currently in any of those queues. Completed plans, I include up to a month within the last month. That just makes sure that if for some reason there was a computer glitch or, the payment email was going to an email that doesn't exist, or someone has left your company, that is a good way to just do a follow-up and make sure that nothing is sliding through the cracks, or that we don't get 3 months down the road and then are scrambling because you realize that the plan was canceled because we didn't receive payment, but it was going to someone who has left your agency or something. I did want to also touch back during COVID, we had a expedited plan review process. That is something that we no longer encourage because our turnaround time is identical, and because you have to use a third-party impartial reviewer, our costs for review are substantially cheaper than doing that third-party review. Still something that I know we're not necessarily taking away in case we ever need that in the future, but it is something that we don't encourage the use of anymore. For those curious about the delegated authority, we do have a list on our website about the 9 cities that are delegated authority and those contact information. Like I said, we do defer to the delegated authority if they say this one was supposed to be affiliates jurisdiction. So always double check with those delegated authorities first, whether or not they feel that that's their jurisdiction, especially if it's on that edge of that radius of their jurisdiction. I know sometimes it gets kind of blurry when it gets to that edge line. We also have local authority cities, which those are the ones that will be doing that accessibility code review. Our system is only as accurate as we've been updated. We do try and update that list yearly, but if you find that you're either being charged a accessibility review fee, but you know that your city is going to do that review, or if you weren't charged that review fee, but you know that your city is not being that, please contact our office and let us know before you make that payment so that we can update our system. This is also a map of that is available on our website. We do have maps that show our inspection areas of which deputy has which county. And it is by last name, but you are able to look up that deputy's contact information on our website as well, which is sorted by last name. And those would be who you would contact to do that inspection once you've received that code review. Those inspectors are waiting for the customer to contact them. They don't go and contact the customer to do that inspection, because they want to make sure that you are ready for inspection when they reach out and do that and schedule that. Last but not least, our office does not enforce or work with IBC codes. And so we don't address any of that in any of our code reviews. Also, if you're doing a code analysis, it would be beneficial to be in NFPA, since I don't even think we have those code books available in our office, and we are not able to enforce anything IBC wise. I believe some of the delegated use IBC, but that is, yeah, but that is above and beyond what we do. All right.
And Taryn, if you want to pop back to the delegated screen, there was some questions I know that people were interested about tribal authorization. I guess it's the next slide. I'm sorry.
Oh.
Anything that is reservation, owned land or zoned that way, we have zero authorization on any tribal land without a formal tribal authorization letter, which that actually can be found on our website. So just because they've requested a review, still does not give us that authority. So we do have to have that letter on file, basically just stating someone of authority in that reservation has requested our presence and our assistance. And we won't move forward with anything until we receive that on file. And then I guess you're done with your slides, correct, Taryn? We could move
That
to
is
Laura's
correct.
list of questions, probably.
Yes.
Okay. Laura, do you have anything that we haven't touched on?
You know, I think we hit most of them, and we have a couple that just came in at the end. How should existing, oops, I just moved. How should existing structures be handled for classification of occupancy and accessibility if aspects such as access have been grandfathered due to the age of existing or non-conforming use? Should a statement of outlining existing building usage or occupancy and intended use be provided on the drawing for review use?
That's wordy.
It is.
The way that I think where this is headed is grandfathered isn't necessarily something that is honored, I guess. At any point in any time, if something is being modified or changed, the new code does need to be met unless there's something in writing stating from our office previously that XYZ does not have to be followed because of ABC. And I guess, Doug, you could also piggyback on this, but anything that we receive as far as drawings, I believe should have usage outlined on the spaces. You know, I mean, like, for example, we had a plan reviewer that was working for us that came from California and had never seen a rodeo arena. So knowing what those spaces are intended to be used for and what kind of concentration of people, I guess, is beneficial. So I would state that, I guess, anything you're submitting to us, if it is not very obvious what it is used for or it is intended use for, should be outlined.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think how they adopt the new codes that we have adopted, it really depends on if you're changing how much of the new building or the existing building you're changing. If you're changing much of the building, the new codes are applicable to that building. So
Right.
Really my biggest thing as a plan reviewer that I'm seeing is we really need that code analysis showing us what you're doing with that building and the use. So those are very handy, and we really ask that you provide that code analysis with any plan submittal. That tells us a lot. So we ask that you do provide those. I think one of the questions, if you could put that delegated authority back up, why does Saunders County carry 1 mile beyond the border of the county? I assume this means 1 mile outside of the towns.
I think it's the local authority that they're referring to, and this would be local authorities taking care of accessibility reviews, and each individual entity has the ability to choose their ETJ. Is that right, Doug? I mean, we don't come up with those radiuses. The local authority does.
No.
Doug is nodding in the background, yes. that is
Okay.
correct.
Okay, and I think this is relative to this webinar. John W., will PDH certificates be available for attending today's webinar?
Yes, what will happen is everyone who attended will get an email through WebEx as a kind of a receipt. And so we will of course accept that for CE purposes if you're one of those lucky licensees who is audited.
Great.
I did see one. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Taryn.
I'll say I did see one question. How you verify that address would be either through the city or the county, depends on your location, but that's who would be confirming or assigning that address.
I do see another question here from James. It says, for projects involving the submission of fire protection criteria design drawings for contractors to bid and complete final design, does your office view the engineer of record as the firm developing the criteria design drawings or the contractor developing the final design? I think that's way above and beyond anything that would be under our umbrella. Basically, whoever's stamp is on what we're reviewing is what gets sent on to the board. And like I said previously, the stamp requirement and I guess whomever is in charge of that project is basically what we have in front of our face when we're making that review. So if it's not accurate as far as what you guys are concerned with, James, I guess I'm not 100% sure where the question was headed, but we don't really honestly care who and what is submitting to us. We're just reviewing what has been provided. And then that goes out to our inspector and then the board to follow up on if there's any questions of who should be doing what.
I will say we may take a look at it. I mean, if there's a project that involves work that is, for example, the practice of engineering,
I can wait.
and it should be done by a licensed professional engineer, we will of course take action if we need to. I would note that there are some subcontractors can perform, for example, mechanical. They have a mechanical license or a plumbing license from a city. I would note that our act allows those types of tradespeople to practice work that could be construed as the practice of engineering, but as long as there's two things that have to happen. They have to have a license to do that from a local jurisdiction, and the work they do has to stay within the confines of whatever that license allows them to do. And so if they do something beyond that is over and above what their city license allows them to do, and that's the practice of engineering or architecture, then that's an enforcement issue for the board, and we would of course take action if needed in those cases.
Okay, and then just one last, due to time, one last question. There was one question on if I'm doing an addition and remodeling, how should I classify that? I would say to put that in as the addition, the larger scope of work, and then we'll look at both the addition and the remodeling, but I would put that in as the scope of work as an addition, please. And I think we covered most of the questions that I had, and we can always recap these, and I can always put in and send out an email that kind of recaps all the questions in case we missed any of those, so that we answered all the questions that you had, if you'd like that.
I did see one that might be an overarchingly important thing. There is a question of what codes are we using to enforce, and they are strictly NFPA codes that our office has the jurisdiction to enforce. A list of our currently adopted codes can be found, I believe, on our website. If not, I do have a PDF copy of that list that I can provide. But one thing to note that Nebraska actually has adopted its own specific version of NFPA 101 and 1. And those do supersede any requirements that may or may not be in just NFPA's version. So we have the 2012 edition of NFPA 1 and 101, Nebraska specific. So those documents can be purchased from NFPA as well, if that's something you guys spend a lot of time working on. And then there was a question, PDF or magazine reader. That's a fun answer. There's only print copies available for purchase.
Yeah.
We haven't even locally been provided with a electronic copy. So we're working through some, I think there's some copyright issues that they're concerned with there, but unfortunately it is a book.
Right. Well, it is a little bit after 1 o'clock. First, I want to apologize for the technical issues. I think we got them all worked out. If you have questions for the board, email them to nbea.office@nebraska.gov. Josh, our public information officer, has some announcements as we wrap this up. And again, I want to thank Doug, Taryn, Kayleen, Laura, and John, and the entire Fire Marshal team for joining us on the web.
I think the same could go for our division as well. We have a generic plans email box that could be utilized if you're not sure who to talk to. It's sfm.plans@nebraska.gov. Or any of us directly will be able to help you as well.
All right. Well, once again, I'd just like to echo thank you to all those from the State Fire Marshal that joined us. I know that this was super informative, and thank you to all the attendees for sticking through those tech issues. A couple marketing announcements from here at the NBEA. So a recording and the slides are going to be available on the NBEA's website over the next few days. CE documents will be emailed over the next few days. You will use that email verification to self-report to AIA or to other organizations as you need to. If you use your cell phone to attend, make sure you shoot me an email. Just it helps speeds up the process as far as sending out that verification. Finally, our next Lunch and Learn webinar is scheduled for July 12th. It's going to be the team here at the NBEA. We want to outline the remediation process for our design professionals out there and try to help ease your easing into that process. And then lastly, our newsletter is available on the website, so check out the latest publication of the Nebraska Professional. And that's all I have. Thank you so much for attending, folks. And we'll be back on the 12th, so we'll see you then.